on from breakups to breakthroughs, how to transform our relationship challenges and blues into empowering life lessons. My name is Josie Thomson. I'm a multi-award winning coach. I'm a mindset, resilience and change expert. And I've had a little bit of experience with this topic. Not one that I'd like to brag about, but one that I've certainly learned a lot of lessons about. And so I really want to make this webinar as authentic as possible, as real as possible, so that you can really relate to it in your own world and that it can be as helpful for you as possible. If there are questions that come up for you, just type them into the chat box. If I get a chance, I will actually look at those. But essentially what I'd like to do, I've put together quite a generous workbook for you, which has got a lot of the theory and some areas that you need to fill out as we go through the workbook today. I want to start off today by talking about some of the definitions, like what do we mean by the word breakup? What do we mean by the word breakthroughs? When we talk about relationships, what kind of relationships could they be? And then I want to get into the juicy part of the webinar, which is actually looking at practical strategies to assist and support you and those people that you really love and care about to transform some of these challenges that we experience in the richness of all of our relationships into really empowering ways of stepping forward, finding our voice, finding ourselves and staying true to ourselves and being able to express ourselves fully, authentically, safely and confidently. So let's get started. So when I was putting this webinar together at the beginning of the year, I was not anticipating yet another break up in my own personal relationships. I was engaged to a man until about 2 months ago, and that relationship was there for 3 years. And before that, I had 2 significant relationships with people that I actually was married to. So I've had a little bit of experience with breakups. And when we talk about breakups, they can be like a severing of the ties. It can be a walking away from people in your lives, not necessarily people that you're in an intimate relationship with. It can also be friendships that you've either outgrown or they've changed, or people change, or people become a little bitter from different life experiences, and therefore their impact in your energy field and in your life becomes detrimental. And you've got to have healthy boundaries to be able to support yourself to live a happy, healthy life. So when we talk about breakups, they can be walk-away situations. They could be misunderstandings. Sometimes simple misunderstandings can really cause a breakdown in our relationships with people. Same with the battle of the wills. Sometimes we can get so stubborn and fixed in our thinking that we don't allow ourselves to truly appreciate the other person's position, especially if they think entirely differently to you. And it's one of the things that we'll talk about today is sometimes the agendas that are running in the background that we're not always conscious about can really interfere with our capacity to be fully present for other people and to be fully open to exploring potentials that actually emerge when there is discord or conflict. Breakups can also be disagreements that we have with people, not just misunderstandings. It can also be sometimes when you decide, look, I just need a break. So where you put a relationship on hold, or you have some kind of a little space and break from one another so that you can get some clarity of distance from each other. And then obviously one of the biggest ones that in my experience as a coach that I get to talk about with people every single day is breakdowns in communication. And you'll find that, you know, when you stop communicating, the relationship actually is stilted. And sometimes relationships actually start to experience a very slow death when you stop talking and stop communicating, because communication is the lifeline to all relationships. And as you will find, when we start talking about communication, that it happens on different layers. It's not just words. There's many other ways to communicate. your commitment, your love, your connection with the people that really matter to you. So when we talk about breakthroughs, what are we really talking about? Breakthroughs are insights. Breakthroughs are being able to not just acknowledge but appreciate a point of view and a perspective that you hadn't considered before. But the only way that that is possible is for you to open your mind. So my request of you on this webinar today is just be curious. When you are curious, you let more information in and you tend to lean into what it is that you're paying attention to and that you're curious about. If you're not curious, you kind of step back, and if you're not careful, you start to put the barriers in front of you because your brain is already starting to form a position of where you want that conversation to go or how you want the situation to be. That is going to interfere with your capacity to have a breakthrough. The other thing that breakthroughs can be is a lesson, something that you learn, something that you grow from, something that expands you. But in order for any of that to happen, there has to be room for you to let go of your need to be right or to control, and this genuine space made available for something new to enter that you can consider. At least consider it before you dismiss it, okay? And the other thing I want to mention is that there are a lot of people that know a lot of things about whether it is relationships or whatever the topics might be, right? Knowing a lot doesn't mean you actually walk your talk. So there's a lot of people that talk the talk really, really well. But it's actually when you're walking the talk that you can actually start to experience breakthroughs in your life, where it shifts from being knowledge into wisdom. And it's only wisdom. So Cecily, if you could turn your recording on mute, please, that would be great. When you can actually translate wisdom into knowledge into wisdom, when you actually apply what you learn, you apply what you actually are now able to understand better than you did before the conflict occurred. So when we talk about relationships, and we've gone through what breakups kind of mean, we talked about what breakthroughs kind of mean. Now we're going to talk about relationships. What are relationships? Right? Relationships can be partner to partner, one-to-one, be one-to-many, it could be friendships, it could be children, it could be family, it could be work colleagues, it could be your mentor, it could be your boss. So relationships occur in so many different contexts. So today I want you to think about what we talk about today being relevant and applicable to whatever kinds of relationships you're involved with right now. The other thing I'd like you to do is set a really clear intention about which relationship are you truly wanting to not just inform, but transform, okay? So there's a reason why you're here today. There's a reason why you're tuning in. To think about what is that relationship that I'm really wanting to get a bit of a shift in for myself. And I want you just to take a moment to think about why. Why do you want that relationship to transform? Why is it important for you to create a shift in that particular relationship? And that's something I want you to have in the background, because if your why isn't big enough, you ain't going to shift, all right? So that's just something to bear in mind. So I want to get into content now. And the content that I want to cover off with you is what I've actually started to put together in the worksheet. So when it comes to what's required to create a breakthrough in relationships, there are 3 key ingredients. So I want you to grab your worksheets and write these down in the numbers 1, 2, and 3. The key ingredients are, first of all, awareness. Now what I mean by that, if you're not paying attention, if you're not actually present, if you're not actually there, noticing the signals, listening to what's going on, even listening to your own intuition, then nothing's going to change. And I know that was certainly for me, my most recent experience is that I had lots of intuitive hunches about things not feeling right. And what I was doing was going into argument with it, saying, no, don't be silly, it's okay. and starting to minimize my own sense of self and my wants and my needs, thinking that maybe I'm asking too much. But what you'll see as we go through this webinar today is that when we start to lose touch with those things that matter to us, then you start numbing yourself and you start making okay things that are actually not okay. And at some point in time, that reality will become stark and you will need to make a choice. And the choice will then be, do I work on this? And do I dare to actually own myself and speak my truth in an appropriate way? And I've given you lots of tips on how to do that effectively, which we'll talk about today. Or is this something, am I willing to work on this? Is the other person that's in this relationship aware of the situation and how I feel about it? And are they also willing to work? So there's a fair bit of responsibility, no matter what the relationship is, on you. Because if it doesn't feel right for you, that actually matters. Even if the other person's blissfully, happily living their lives thinking everything's great, you have a duty of care to yourself to own your truth and to speak it out. And the first part of that is just paying attention and being really aware of what the situation is and how it's impacting you. If circumstance of that relationship is expanding and uplifting and makes you feel good about you, then it's a good relationship. If at any point in time that relationship actually contracts you, and you will feel yourself starting to feel contained and shrinking, and you will start losing your sense of self, then that's a signal for you to pay attention. But the only way you can do that is to be aware. So the first key in attaining a breakthrough is to pay attention, to be aware, okay? The second key is responsibility. So it's one thing to know that something doesn't feel right. Responsibility means, well, what are you going to do about it? So remember before when we talked about the distinction between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing something's not right, but wisdom is actually doing something about that and acting on that knowledge that you are aware of. So yes, you pay attention and you're aware that something's not quite right, but then you say, right, I need to take responsibility for this. What does that mean? Does it mean that I just simply pull out and walk away? Does it mean that I invest in having the courage to safely and truthfully, we'll talk about how to do this in a moment, speak my truth and share my experience of what's going on here? And that's part of taking responsibility. Taking responsibility is making a decision about, now that I know something's not quite right, am I willing to do something about it? Okay? And that's totally your call. No one's judging you on whether, you know, you're ready to. Sometimes it's a matter of timing, saying, no, I need to get to this point before I call it. But the sooner you call it, the better. And all it is sometimes not even knowing the solution, is just having the courage to say, hey, something doesn't feel quite right here. What's your sense? And even if the other person says, oh, no, it's fine, then you go, okay. Then it gives you something else. It's more information for you to take on. But at least you've spoken up and you've said something about it. That's probably step one. And then you might take responsibility to the next stage where you go, you know, there's something still doesn't feel quite right here. I'd really like to explore this with you. Are you open to that? So you start inviting the other person into the conversation. But we'll go into conversational tools in a moment. And the third key, so we've got awareness is number one. Two is to take responsibility, to own the outcome, right? Even if it is to just stick with it and just leave it where it is, it's still a decision, right? And the third one is, what I wrote down, is a willingness and an openness to grow, to learn, and to improve. So relationships are not perfect. I'm yet to see and meet anyone that has ever had an absolutely perfect relationship. In fact, I haven't met a perfect human being yet, right? And I don't believe I'll actually ever meet a perfect human being, because this is something I want you to realize, is that we are all a work in progress. Every one of us, you, your partner, your children, your parents, your friends, everyone is a work in progress. So it's not like we wake up one day and go, whoa, I've done life, what am I going to do today? Every day is an opportunity for you to learn and grow. That's having what's called a growth mindset. But there are some people that operate in the world with a very fixed mindset. And that, for them, means that if something's not right in their relationship, they don't dare acknowledge it, because it would be a slight on their character in some way. It would mean that they have failed in some way. And that fixed kind of thinking really prevents them from truly connecting in an intimate, authentic way, because they're too busy proving to the world that everything's cool, everything's good, when in actual fact it's not. And that creates a lot of problems for not just that individual with the fixed mindset, but also for the relationships that they're in. So the 3 keys: awareness, responsibility, and a willingness or an openness to learn and grow. Okay. So the second thing that I've written on the worksheets is about, okay, we need to have conversations, we need to have communications in our relationships in order to convert any adversity, any challenges, any blues into breakthroughs. How do we do that? Well, there are 2 key communication tools that you need to be able to have the conversation. And it's called radical candor. And the 2 communication keys are truth and, I've just gone into them, kindness. It's kindness. So the way that works is, when you dare and when you're ready to have these conversations, it's about speaking the truth, but also being able to do it in a kind way. Because sometimes if we're too truthful, it can land in an unkind way, and it puts people into threat. And if they go into threat, they stop listening and they just want safety, psychological safety. And that's no space for creating a safe space for the kind of communication you're trying to have to bridge the space between you, right? Then there are conversations that we have that are too kind. They're too kind and not truthful enough. So we have to get that balance right, where we can speak quite directly about how we're feeling, what we're thinking, what the experience is, but making sure that we do it in a kind way. So one way, an example of that might be, hey, I really need to speak with you. I've got something on my mind. I've just noticed lately that it seems to me to be a bit of a gap emerging in our relationship. And I don't like that. And I'd really love to feel that connection and the closeness with you again. Are you up for that? Or have you noticed that? So notice that I'm being quite direct about it, and I'm being quite kind about it. Is now a good time, right? So think about the fact that, hey, I'm about to present something pretty big to that person. Are they prepared for it? Are they even aware of it? And is it a big deal to them? And are they committed to that conversation? So just be open and curious about it, but just make sure that you are being truthful and you present it in a way that's kind for the other person, that you're not going to go into threat. One strategy that I found really, really effective is if you actually put your hand on your heart when you actually have that conversation. What happens is something called coherence. And so your heart, that can get a bit scared, feels supported. It feels this warmth and connection with your hand, right? So you put your hand somewhere near your heart and you then have the conversation. And I'm right now showing you that. I'll show you that. So I'm putting it here. And you're aware of it because I'm saying it to you. But if I was talking to you in a conversation, I go, look, this is how I feel about it. You wouldn't even notice it really. It's not like I'm going to do a drum roll. Watch, I'm going to put my hand on my heart and now I'm going to talk to you. I just do it really naturally. So if I know that there's something really tough I need to talk with you about, I might then put my hand here without you even realising it, and I'll do it, try to do it naturally now with you. Hey, there's something I really need to talk with you about. It's been on my mind for a while and I haven't known how to raise it. But it's really important because you're important to me. And I've noticed lately that there's been a bit of a disconnect between us for me. and I don't feel as close to you as I used to, and I really miss that, and I'd really like to get it back. Have you noticed that? Is that, you know, something that you're aware of, and are you open to a conversation about it? So notice that way it just, my heart doesn't race, I don't freak out about it, and it kind of somehow, it's done neurochemically, it creates a bit of a comfort for your heart as you start to have this conversation. So try that out and see what you think. The second thing that I actually wrote down, the third point actually on the worksheet, is about the secret to maintaining calm, understanding, and potential to successful resolutions. There's one word, it starts with C, and the C word is compassion. So what do I mean by compassion? I want you to set aside what you think you know about the other person. I don't care if you've known them a lifetime. I don't care if you've grown up with them. Put aside everything, every single assumption that you make about that other person, and try for one moment to put yourself in their shoes, because they've never lived a day of life in yours, nor have you in theirs. So think for a moment, just like me, that person is trying to find their way in the world. Just like me, this person has known conflict and strain and pain. Just like me, this person is doing their best. Just like me, they're trying to survive. Like, find the common space, find that compassion between the pair of you, so that the distance between your hearts isn't as severe. It's still distant, but it's not as severe, because you have this connection to our humanity, that we're doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can with what we know, with what we're comfortable and confident in doing. If you're not confident bringing your voice out and speaking your truth, well, what if it's the same for them? Even though they project this external, face that says, hey, I'm all together and I'm confident and I'm successful in life. Well, how do they feel with their inner world? Because here's the thing about relationships. If you want to have a wonderful relationship with any other person on this planet, it starts with cultivating that quality relationship with you. All of your relationships will in some way mirror back to you aspects of yourself. So when someone really triggers you, you need to pause and go, whoa, where am I doing that in my life right now? Where do I show up like that? Everyone comes into your life to help you heal and to help you grow. You get to choose how that's going to work, right? But if you go into battle thinking that you're on opposing sides with everyone else, then the battle's already lost. You have to realize that no matter whether you like the person or not, we still are one humanity, and we are still on our own paths to learning and growing about ourselves and the way life works. We're just at different levels, different stages of development. So compassion is really important to level it out a little bit, to keep your feet on the ground, and to keep you relatively open and calm to be able to have the conversations you need to have. Now, the next point that I made on the worksheet is that the best way to stay true to yourself at all times is to explicitly know and align your thoughts, your words, your deeds with your values. I've spoken about values before. Values are your blueprint to happiness in life. When you know what your core values are, you know what you stand for, you know what's most important to you, and you know who you are. And they are non-negotiable for every relationship, for anything that you commit to. So please do yourself a favor and seek to define your core values. Successful relationships also are nurtured and maintained through what I've written down on your worksheet as GPS. Now, what does GPS mean? So G stands for growth. P stands for play. S stands for serve. So what do I mean by this? If you want a successful relationship, all parties must be committed to growth. Everyone will grow in their own way at their own speed. But there's a commitment to not just being right, It's a commitment to being happy. And that means sometimes my thinking will be challenged and it will not be comfortable, because guess what? We do not grow or learn in our comfort zones. So it's going to be uncomfortable. But that's when you get to learn something new. So open your mind and invite the lesson in. Ask yourself, what am I being invited to learn? Okay? So with my last relationship, the massive lesson for me was learning to stay true to myself. Stop discounting those things that actually do matter to me. What someone thinks is needy is actually base for me. And so it is actually what I want. And I don't need to negotiate that with anybody. And communication is that number one for me. The other thing that we've got here is play. So in order for relationships to be sustainable, not only do you want to grow and have that hard stuff that we battle through from time to time to get to better spaces, we want to play as well. We want to enjoy ourselves. And remember the word joy. Bring joy into your days. If you want more, how are you contributing? Don't just wait for your partner and other people to bring it in. You offer it up. Bring that. Play more every single day. And the third one is serve. How can I serve you as my partner? How can I serve you as my friend? And the best way to do that is to understand what that person's love language might be. And I've listed those in your worksheet as well. So there are 5 ways that you can express love to one another. And there's just lately been a 6th one introduced. And those languages are acts of service, so doing something to lighten my load. So it might be put the washing out, unload the dishwasher, make the bed, right? It might be words of affirmation. Some people need to hear the words, I love you, I appreciate you, you matter, okay? The third one, these are not in any order, is physical touch. Some people like to be stroked, they like holding hands, they like cuddles, right? Another one is tokens and gifts. So some people like to have tokens and gifts expressed to them. And the 5th one is my favourite, is quality time. So I don't care that I don't see you all day long. But if I have half an hour with you at the end of the day, I want your full attention. That means TV off, mobile phones off, and I have you. Totally for me. All right? And the 6th one that's just recently been introduced is space. So honouring my need, especially if I'm an introvert, to just have quality time out for myself. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but just some time. So honouring my need for that. The other thing that I've included in your worksheets is something called the 5 A's. Now, this is something that I came across when I was studying neuroscience and I finished my master's, and I was doing some work with Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz. And he introduced me to David Rico. And he looked at, well, what are the things that must be present to have healthy relationships? And he came up with this thing called the 5 A's. So if you look at your worksheet, the first one is attention. So having genuine attention displayed. The second one is acceptance. So opposite to judgment. Just accepting the other person for where they're at. The third one is affection. The 4th one is appreciation. And the 5th one was really interesting, which is allowing, which it says it is a safe space to be yourself and express all that you feel, even if it's not entirely polite or socially acceptable, right? So think about those 5 A's, how you allow them for the other person, but also what he says, and I wrote this in your workbooks, is that we should only expect to have approximately 25% of our needs for these 5 A's from any other person. We are actually primarily responsible for those 5 A's for ourselves. I really love that model and I hope it's useful to you. The other thing that I've included in your worksheets today, and I'm just mindful of the time, is guidelines for resolving conflict and fighting fairly. So you'll see here, the first one is stick to the subject, so one subject at a time. We're going to have a conversation, one topic, one subject at a time, and don't let the other person veer off and don't you veer off, just one thing. The second one is deal with feelings. Make sure you're expressing how you're feeling right now, hand on heart, but make sure it's done with truth and kindness, and check in with the other person. about how they're feeling as they're having a conversation as well. The third one is taking turns of listening and expressing. If you have two people talking at the same time, no one is listening. So it's vital that there's turn taking for speaking and listening. Staying in the present, so not allowing your brain to start going and getting evidence from past or projecting forward into fears. You need to keep your focus on this conversation right now about this issue. The fifth one is speaking from your own experience. So don't talk about other people's comments or thoughts of what you've heard. So talking and owning yourself, your expression. Using empathetic language and active listening. I think we've spoken about that today. And making sure that you actually focus on the problem. It says attack, but I don't like the word attack. Attack the problem, not the person. So separate the behaviour from the person. Talk about the behaviour that's upsetting you. Right? Don't tarnish the person with your thoughts. And the last one is finding a win-win, which is really, really critical. So I've listed a whole bunch of ways that you can get some additional support and resources for assisting you and enabling you to turn your breakdowns into breakthroughs. One of them is a book that I published at the beginning of the year called The Wise Advocate. And that's all about that little voice inside your head that knows the right thing to do. It always has your back. It loves and cares for you. And it's not always easy to partner with that voice, but that voice knows the right thing to do in the long run, okay? And it's the most wise, inner loving guide that you could ever access. So you might want to check that out. And also in your workbooks, I've given you a whole bunch of points to remember, which I'd like to share. So your hurts, pains and feelings are valid. Make sure you thank them. They're reminding you about what's important to you. Happy or right, it's your choice. If you want to be right, you're not going to be happy. You've got to take that ego and push it to the side and seek to learn what else is going on here. Bitter or better, again, it's your choice. So do I want to get bitter from these breakdowns or am I going to get better? Do I commit to improvement? Give up your battles, but don't give up on yourself. Stay true to your values. Check in on your mindset. Make sure you shift to growth. Always ask yourself when you're challenged, what am I being invited to learn here? There's always something bigger that you can't see right now. And be willing to forgive. Because if you don't forgive, you're just going to carry all the hurts with you and it's going to make you bitter. Recognizing someone else's behaviour, you find it's unacceptable. I want you to just bring compassion forward. Relationships promote a lot of unresolved patterns in yourself, and it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. So press pause and go, what's triggering in me? What do I need to learn here? What do I need to heal? How do I need to grow? And I'd like you to read the rest of them yourself because I'm just mindful of the time. I think the last point that I really want to make for all of you is that you are responsible for your own happiness and unhappiness. So don't rely on anybody else for your source of happiness. It rests with you. So I hope that today was helpful for you in your relationships. I'd love you to share your thoughts and ideas with me. What resonated for you today? What did you hear today that really could help or improve any of the relationships that you're navigating right now? But the one relationship I want you to start to nurture and cultivate is the one with you. If you want love out there, start to grow that with you, and perhaps that's another topic that I'll talk about in a future webinar. But relationships really, for me, are what life is all about. They do matter and you matter. So all relationships will mirror back to you what you most need to heal and learn. So remember that. And cultivate that magical relationship within yourself that you wish to share and enjoy with others around you. So from me to you, from my heart to yours, here's to much healthier, happier, more fulfilling and abundant relationships. And may you feel empowered to grow those relationships on your terms. May God be with you and well done for being here today. Thank you.